Welcome back, Archer athletes. Today's theme is angular movement. Specifically, we are going to explore what movements are required in order for you to achieve our goal. And our goal today is to have the draw side elbow inside the arrow line, starting at set position and remaining inside the arrow line all the way through the end of follow through. So why is it important to have the draw side elbow inside the arrow line? Number one, you cannot achieve holding if the draw side elbow is outside the arrow line. Number two, the position of the draw side elbow during set and setup determines if the rest of the shot movements are going to be linear or angular. And we want them to be angular. Why? Well, we develop more back tension when the draw side elbow is inside the arrow line. The shot's movements are going to be more efficient, more powerful, and we're going to have stronger shot execution. Finally, the last reason why we want the draw side elbow to be inside the arrow line, injury prevention. Injuries that are common to the rotator cuff, the bicep, and the bicep tendon are frequently seen when we are shooting archery in linear type ways rather than angular ways, and that happens when our draw side elbow is outside the arrow line. The standard you will use today to assess your progress as you go through the drills and multi-part progression, I want you to make sure your draw side elbow is inside the arrow line on 100% of the completed repetitions. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is you'll be using a mirror, so you'll be able to see immediately if your elbow is not in the correct position. If it's not in the correct position, do not complete that rep. Therefore, that rep doesn't count as a completed rep. So all of the reps that you complete, 100% of them, are going to be 100% correct because you'll be able to see yourself in the mirror and stop yourself if you're not doing it correctly. So you're going to need to be honest with yourself and honest with what you see. I will put up some examples in just a minute to help you get a sound, accurate mental representation of what proper draw side elbow alignment looks like in set position, in setup position, and at the end of draw. Here's a quick overview of the day. Number one, I'm going to give you a description of the ideal draw side elbow position, and we'll get into some details of that, and I'll give you some cues for the day. Number two, I'm going to give you 3 different warm-ups to do to get our bodies ready for the multi-part progression. And finally, we'll dive into a 4-part progression that is going to be tricky. You might not complete it in this hour-and-a-half session. It might take you several sessions to go through this because part of the standard today will require that you are successful in part 1 of the progression, for instance, before you move on to the second part of the progression. Focus today will be on what movements you need to make during set, setup, and drawing in order to keep your draw side elbow inside the arrow line. Now, I've chosen set, setup, and drawing to focus on because those are the steps in the shot cycle where I typically see athletes lose proper draw side elbow alignment. Your draw side elbow is the elbow on the draw side of your body, so same side of your body that your hook is on. Now, the term inside the arrow line is an imaginary line that we draw along the shaft of the arrow, through the nock, and then out into space. And if we take this as an example right here, imagine the imaginary line along the arrow, out into space. Right now, my elbow is inside that arrow line. Okay? Right now, my elbow is in line with that arrow line. That is also okay. We do not want our elbow outside the line of the arrow as shown here. Okay? So outside, in line with, that's okay, or inside of, and that's also okay. You want your draw side elbow either in line with the arrow line or inside of that arrow line. I want to expose you to 3 different visuals that we'll be using throughout today's progression. The first one has to do with the tape. You'll notice the tape on the top edge of my arm. I want you to go ahead, find a piece of tape, place it from the top edge of your wrist back to just before your elbow. This tape is going to help you have a visual cue as to where the arrow line is in relation to your elbow. So go ahead, pause this video, go find some tape and place it on. The second cue that I want you to be aware of is when I say the term open the window or close the window, I want you to know what I'm referring to. And what I'm referring to specifically is, if you watch the bow right now, here I am in set position, and I'm driving my bow arm in the same plane as the target, right? I'm driving my bow arm in that direction, and my elbow is inside the arrow line. Then I have a window that's open. I have a window that's been created between the limb here and the string here on the bow. All right? That's the window I'm talking about. We want that window open. And that window will be a little bit less open if my draw side elbow is in line with the arrow line, and it will be a little bit more open if my elbow is inside that arrow line. But there will be no window if my elbow is outside that imaginary arrow line. So right now, from my perspective, the string is right in line with the limb. Okay? So the window will remain open during set and set up, and then that window will close as we draw, because the bow is going to pivot in the hand, and you'll see the stabilizer and the arrow swing over towards the target. Now that brings me to my third cue, which is spotlight. All right? And you'll hear me say spotlight today several times. And that has to do with, I want you to imagine you have a spotlight on the back of your riser here or on the end of your stabilizer. And when you are in set position, remember your bow hand is going to be driving towards the target in the same plane as the target, not over here. We're not swinging the bow way up and over. Okay? So drive towards the target, open up the window, and now look where my spotlight is. My spotlight is not illuminating the target. It's shining over to the right of the target for a left-handed archer, to the left of the target for a right-handed archer. That spotlight will remain off to the side of the target through set and set up. And then the spotlight will come over and illuminate the target as the bow pivots in the hand as you draw the bow. Okay? So those are three cues I want you to be aware of today. Number one, grab some tape, put it on your arm. Number two, open window and close the window. And number three, spotlight. I've added a stabilizer to this training bow, and I recommend you do that as well. Adding the stabilizer is going, even if you're a bare bow archer, do this for this training exercise. This is going to help increase your awareness of where the bow is pointed in relation, or where that arrow line is in relation to your draw side elbow. The up and over shoulder warm-up. Grab an extra long stretch band, pole, or even a bow stringer. Start with the stretch band in front of you. Raise your arms up, keeping your arms straight, so that the stretch band remains parallel with the ground and is over your head. Breathe in as you raise the band. Exhale as you let your arms complete the rotation as far behind your head towards your back as you can comfortably complete. Side plank progression with modifications. Side plank modifications are wonderful for building strength in the hip muscles. This will provide for greater strength and stability as an archer. Side planks also help work the muscles that support the knees, and keeping the knees stable during the shot cycle is key to developing a solid foundation for the shot. I offer 4 modifications here, progressing from easier to more challenging. First, find your position on the floor, with your knees bent at 90 degrees and your forearm on the ground. Try and keep your knees, hip, and elbow approximately in the same line, and also align your body so that your shoulders, trunk, hips, and legs are all in the same plane. Support your upper body on the forearm. Second, engage your core, trunk muscles, and squeeze the glutes. Finally, float the hip that is closest to the ceiling towards the ceiling. Progression 2 is a little more challenging and involves keeping your upper body support arm in the same position, but scissoring your legs out for stability. Perform as many 3 to 5 second reps as you can in 30 seconds and then switch sides. Progression 3. Continue to stay on your supporting forearm and increase the challenge by stacking your feet on top of each other. This will challenge your sense of balance. Progression 4. Keep your feet stacked and support your torso with a stiff, engaged arm, palm against the ground. On all of these progressions, make sure you find your position first, then develop tension in the core and glutes and supporting arm triceps and lats, and then float your hips towards the ceiling to add the resistance. Perform as many 3 to 5 second reps as you can in 30 seconds and then switch sides. Shot cycle warm-up. Grab your stretch band and either 2 stability discs or 2 large towels folded into smaller squares. Place the stability discs or towels on the floor at a distance and angle that approximates where your feet are positioned during stance. Stand on the stability discs or towels and perform 25 repetitions of your shot cycle focused on the 1 rolling hill, 2 mountains, 1 plateau breath cycle we worked on in previous videos. For part 1 of this progression, you're going to need a long mirror, a stretch band, a lightweight training bow, a long rod stabilizer, and some painter's tape. Place the painter's tape along the top edge of your forearm where you saw it earlier. Put the stabilizer on your training bow, and here's what the progression is going to look like. It will be, part 1 has 2 different pieces to it, an A and a B. OTW stands for open the window. You're going to start out with making sure your window is open with a stretch band in front of a mirror in just set and set up position. That's it. So you're going to be doing repetitions of finding set position and then doing set up position over and over again, 12 of them, looking into the mirror, okay? You need to get 12 reps in that are perfect, where your elbow is definitely inside of or in line with the arrow line. Then, after those 12, you go on to the second part of this step in the progression, and this is also open the window exercise for set and set up, but with a bow. So it's the same thing you just did up here with the stretch band, but now you're doing it with a bow, no arrows, looking into a mirror. If you end up messing up on one of the shots, don't complete it. If you're in set position and you see yourself in the mirror with your elbow outside the arrow line, there's no need to continue. Stop, figure out what movement you need to do to get that elbow inside the arrow line or in line with the arrow line, okay? You're going to do that cycle twice. One question I'd like you to consider right now after finishing part 1 of the progression: does set and set up look or feel different to you right now? And if they do, if they feel or look different to you right now, describe what's different. Part 2 of the 4-part progression involves the same supplies that you had for part 1. So you're still going to need the mirror, the stretch band, the lightweight training bow, the stabilizer, and the painter's tape. The only piece that's changed is that we've added closing the window, CTW. So now you're going to do set in set position with a stretch band, okay? This is with a band. You'll do set position with a stretch band, and then you're going to go through set and set up, keeping the window open, and then you're going to practice closing the window as you go through draw. No need to continue on to the rest of the shot cycle. Just go set, set up, draw to load, and go ahead and load there. As you'll see the bow or the band, depending on whether you're on A or B, pivoting in your hand and coming to point straight at the mirror. So your spotlight will be coming from the side of the mirror over directly into where you're looking. So that's part A. Do 12. Again, same as last time. You need to do 12 good ones before you move on. And then here we have with the bow, open the window and close the window with the bow. So open the window and set up. Window stays open, and then the window closes as you go ahead and draw. The bow will pivot in your hand. 12 good reps using the mirror, and then you're going to do that cycle 2 times. Now that you've completed the open the window and close the window drill with a stretch band and a bow, I want you to define exactly what movements you are making that are allowing you to keep your draw side elbow in alignment with the arrow line. In addition, I want you to consider how you are able to tell at this point in time when your alignment is lost. How does it feel when that draw side elbow comes to the outside of that arrow line. Part 3 involves you getting a video camera of some sort, could be a phone or a tablet, up above you or at some angle where you can easily see if your draw side elbow is inside the arrow line or outside the arrow line where we don't want it. You're going to shoot 3 arrows and then review the video footage from those 3 arrows. I want your video footage to be a very clear angle so that you can, beyond a shadow of a doubt, see for yourself if your draw side elbow is inside the arrow line or outside the arrow line. If on all 3 arrows you were successful, then shoot 3 more, and recording with video, and review those next 3 arrows. If you were successful again, do it again and again until you've shot 4 ends of 3 arrows. Once you've shot 4 ends of 3 arrows successfully, all of the arrows, all of the shots having your elbows, your draw side elbow remain inside the shooting arrow line, go ahead and move on to part 4, okay? Now, here's the other situation that might happen in part 3. If your draw side elbow ends up being outside the arrow line on any of the shots, then you redo that end of arrows, and it does not count towards your 4 ends that you need of perfect arrows in order to move on. Part 4 of this progression cycle, shoot 4 ends of 6 arrows per end. You're going to be at tournament distance and tournament target face size. I want you to log each of your shots based on where the draw side elbow alignment is. Do you consider it as needing work, okay, or good? Okay? So if it needs work, that means it was outside the arrow line, or that you were not aware of where it was. That needs work, okay? If it was okay or good, that means that it was either in line with or inside the arrow line, which are both great positions to be. So I want you to try to shoot those 24 arrows without any shots that need work. I want you, because we're really focused on set up, and draw today, I want you, by this point in the progression, to know what it feels like when you're doing it correctly. So if you're at one of those stages in the shot cycle and something doesn't feel right and you think your draw elbow is outside the arrow line, let down and don't let that arrow fly. Final reflection questions for the day. What movements do you need to make in order for the draw side elbow to travel through space inside or in line with the arrow line? That question might be enough for some of you, but if you want more of a specific question, think of these 2 questions here. Describe where your hook needs to be in relation to your torso during set position in order to have your draw side elbow inside the arrow line. What does your hook wrist need to be doing? And what about coiling, the rotation of your torso and movement of the shoulder blade during setup? Share what, if anything, you discovered about those movements in relation to today's goal. And my last question, this one for everybody, how honest were you during today's practice? How successful were you in holding yourself accountable to only following through with the next step if your elbow is in the correct place in space? What impact did that have on your success today? Train ugly, train hard. Till next time, happy shooting.